The morning of the quiet bell. That morning, Franz woke up with a heavy heart. He was very late for school, and he was terrified of being scolded by M. Hamel. The teacher had promised to examine the class on participles, verb forms used as adjectives, and Franz did not know the first word about them. He felt a sense of trepidation, a feeling of fear or agitation, as he pulled on his coat, imagining the stern look on the old master's face. For a moment, Franz thought of skipping school altogether. The weather was so warm and bright. Out in the woods, the birds were chirping at the edge of the forest, and in the open field back of the sawmill, the Prussian soldiers were drilling, practicing military movements or exercises. It was all much more tempting than the rules of grammar, but he found the strength to resist and hurried off toward the village. As he passed the town hall, Franz noticed a crowd of people standing in front of the little bulletin board. For the past 2 years, all the bad news had come from or originated from that spot, news of lost battles and the orders of the commanding officers. He didn't stop to look, wondering to himself what could be the matter now. A voice called out to him. It was Wachter, the blacksmith, who was there with his apprentice reading the news. "Don't go so fast, bub," Wachter shouted with a gruff smile. "You'll get to your school in plenty of time." Franz thought the man was making fun of him because he was so late. Franz ignored the comment and kept running until he reached M. Hamel's little garden. He was completely breathless, panting and out of breath by the time he arrived. Usually, when school began, there was a great commotion, noisy disturbance, that could be heard out in the street, the opening and closing of desks, and lessons repeated in unison, very loud. But today, everything was strangely still. Franz had counted on the noise to slip into his seat unnoticed, but the silence was absolute, complete and total. Through the open window, he could see his classmates already in their places. The silence felt heavy, like the air before a summer storm. He peeked through the glass pane of the classroom window. To his surprise, the room was filled with a solemn, serious and formal atmosphere. His classmates sat perfectly still, their faces unusually grave. There was no tapping of pens or shuffling of feet. It was as quiet as a Sunday morning in the village church. Then, Franz saw M. Hamel. The teacher was walking up and down the room with his formidable, inspiring fear or respect, iron ruler under his arm. Instead of his usual work clothes, M. Hamel was wearing his beautiful green frock coat and his black silk cap, which he only wore on inspection days or when prizes were given. Franz realized he couldn't wait any longer. He had to enter. He opened the door and walked into the silent room. He was mortified, deeply embarrassed or ashamed, and frightened, expecting a harsh word from the master for his tardiness. He blushed a deep red as every eye in the room turned toward him. To his amazement, Monsieur Hamel looked at him kindly and said in a very gentle voice, "Go to your place quickly, little Franz. We were beginning without you." Franz hurried to his bench and sat down. Only then, when he had recovered a bit from his fright, did he notice that the back benches, which were always empty, were filled with the village people. He looked around. A heavy solemnity, seriousness, hung over the room, making the familiar schoolhouse feel like a quiet, holy place. He turned his head and gasped quietly at what he saw. The back benches, which were always empty, were filled with people from the village. There sat old Hauser, holding an ancient thumbed primer on his knees, his eyes filled with a quiet veneration, deep respect for the room. M. Hamel stood at the front of the room, looking more formal than Franz had ever seen him. He was dressed in his beautiful green coat and frilled shirt, clothes he usually saved for inspection days. He carried himself with a new, quiet dignity, self-respect, that made every student sit up straighter. M. Hamel mounted his chair and spoke in the same grave, gentle tone he had used to welcome Franz. "My children," he began, his voice steady but heavy with emotion, "this is the last lesson I shall give you. An order has come from Berlin to teach only German in our schools. This is your last French lesson." The teacher's words hit Franz like a sudden thunderclap, startling surprise. He finally understood the crowd at the bulletin board and the presence of the elders. He felt a sharp, sudden pang of remorse, deep regret, for all the mornings he had spent chasing birds' nests instead of studying his grammar. His French books, which had felt like such a heavy burden only an hour ago, now felt like old dear friends he was about to lose forever. Franz realized that his language was a precious heritage, traditions passed down, and for the first time in his life he truly wanted to learn. The key to the prison. Bastien sat at his scarred wooden desk, his heart heavy with a realization he had never felt before. M. Hamel stood before the class, his voice steady but filled with a quiet sorrow. He spoke to them about the danger of procrastination, the act of delaying or postponing something. We have all said to ourselves, "Bah, I have plenty of time. I will learn it tomorrow," M. Hamel said. And now you see where we have come. The great trouble with Alsace is that she puts off learning until tomorrow. At the back of the room, usually empty, sat the village elders. Old Hauser, the former mayor, and the postmaster were there, sitting as quietly as the children. Their presence added a profound solemnity, the state or quality of being serious and dignified to the atmosphere. Old Hauser held an ancient, tattered primer open on his knees, his spectacles lying across the pages. They had come to thank their teacher for 40 years of faithful service and to honor the country that was theirs no more. M. Hamel began to speak of the French language, calling it the most beautiful, the clearest, and the most logical language in the world. He told them they must guard it among them and never forget it. This lesson was poignant, evoking a keen sense of sadness or regret, deeply touching because it was a goodbye to their very identity. When a people are enslaved, he said, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had the key to their prison. Then they turned to the grammar lesson. Bastien was amazed to see how well he understood it. Everything M. Hamel said seemed so easy, so simple. Bastien realized he had never listened so carefully, and that the teacher had never explained everything with so much patience. It felt as if the poor man wanted to give them all he knew before going away, to put it all into their heads at one stroke. After grammar, they had a lesson in writing. For this occasion, Monsieur Hamel had prepared entirely new copies for them, written in a beautiful round hand. France, Alsace, France, Alsace. They looked like little flags floating everywhere in the schoolroom, hung from the rods at the top of their desks. Bastien and his classmate Elouan dipped their pens into the inkwells, determined to make every letter perfect. This was more than just a test of penmanship, the skill or art of writing by hand. It was a silent, powerful act of patriotism. The only sound in the room was the scratching of pens over the paper. Even the village elders joined in. Old Hauser put on his spectacles and, holding his primer in both hands, spelled the letters with the children. His voice trembled with emotion, and it was so strange to hear him that they all wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. Once, some beetles flew in, but nobody paid any attention to them, not even the littlest ones. On the roof, the pigeons cooed very low. Bastien looked up from his writing and wondered to himself, will they make them sing in German too, even the pigeons? He felt a sharp pang of loss for the simple sounds of his home that might never feel the same again. Whenever Bastien looked up from his writing, he saw M. Hamel sitting motionless in his chair. The teacher was gazing first at one thing, then at another, as if he wanted to fix in his mind exactly how everything looked in that little schoolroom. For 40 years he had been there, with his garden outside the window and his class in front of him. It was a heartbreaking scene of quiet devotion. Suddenly the church clock struck 12. Then the Angelus rang. At the same moment, the trumpets of the Prussians, returning from drill, sounded under their windows. M. Hamel rose from his chair, very pale. Bastien had never seen him look so tall. "My friends," he said, I... But something choked him. He could not go on. The overwhelming, extremely great or powerful emotion of the moment finally broke through. M. Hamel could not speak another word. He turned to the blackboard, took a piece of chalk, and bearing on with all his might, he wrote as large as he could, "Vive la France!" Then he stopped and leaned his head against the wall, and without a word, he made a gesture to them with his hand. "School is dismissed. You may go."